Hey everyone, this is what my face looks like, and this video I'm going to talk more kind of like big picture stuff, but it's stuff that if you're a frustrated OPZ owner, I think it'll help you out a lot. If you're on the fence about getting one, I'm not trying to convince you to buy it, but I hope that this is what I wish I would have had when I was thinking about getting one. Notice I've got my notes here, so hopefully I'll stay somewhat on track, but this is going to be more of a conversational video. And on top of that, I will be using examples through the OPZ, and it's just recording a speaker output for it. So it's just not going to be as clear, and there's kind of a purpose for that. I'll explain my point in just a little bit. So I want to say that there's more than one way to use this thing, and my way isn't the only way, but why I'm going to make the argument that you might want to try using it the same way as me is because you'll actually be able to finish songs with it. You'll actually be able to use it as part of, a larger setup. And I think the design kind of pushes you toward this way, and hopefully I'll be able to explain some of that. So first thing I want to talk about is I think that the design suggests holding it like this or like this, and I don't think it suggests putting it on a table and using it kind of like a keyboard. I think that you end up going slower, and it's kind of less precise. It's much easier when filming a video, recording a video, whatever, but it's not necessarily faster. So if I hold it like this, where my thumb is right now is track. I can quickly change tracks to whatever I want and quickly sequence things. I can turn it like here, actually put in the triggers I want, add the component steps or the step components that I want. I can easily access, queue up a different pattern, change the project, whatever, change my mute group. I can change the MIDI settings. I've got legacy input enabled, so I can even enable my mic or my line in through the module from right there. I can change the tempo, anything. You'll note that I don't have I've got microphone mode disabled. I've changed a lot of the config settings, so hopefully doesn't throw you off too much. The next thing I want to talk about, aside from its speed, is I want to talk about ergonomics really quickly. I tend to get really cramped up and hunched over when I set the OPZ down, but I can maintain a better posture if I'm holding it like this or like this. On top of that, it just kind of... that was it. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is that if you do decide to hold it like this, let's say I want to press the track button, I might be tempted to have my thumb go to the side like this every time. That might be okay, but that doesn't seem like a great movement to do like 1,000 times. So if you just move your thumb normally up and down, these buttons are so easy to press that you can really just use a more natural sort of press onto the button. And I think that that'll probably spare some of those smaller joints and muscles in your hand and in your forearm. So let's talk about what I actually use it for. So I use it to roughly sketch out a project. And I think that the design leads me to do this because a lot of the sound design options are limited. They're not as limited as you might think they are. You can get really creative with them, but as far as quick tweaks and stuff, it is pretty limited. But this allows you to do more. I think it kind of keeps me moving in terms of composition. So let's say, and last thing. I think it's meant to be used with external gear. They have this onboard Bluetooth, and it works pretty well. I've got it paired to a CME WDI U-host that's connected to this keyboard right now, but there's plenty of other options that you could use. And I think that it's also meant to control other gear mostly. But today I'll just be putting notes into it. So I keep building up, but my goal here is to kind of give you an idea of the language of the OPZ. So you have my step components videos, which are sort of the language of the sequencer, how you could take your thoughts and use the step components to get your thoughts onto the sequencer. And then there's also my learning series. This one is more about looking at your OPZ and taking its feedback and really understanding kind of the information that it gives you on basically every page. Okay, so what I love is that I find it really easy for me to think of an idea and then just do it. And what I'll show you here is I'm going to fully clear this pattern. And I've switched to the chords track. Okay, so it's making noise. And I'm just going to hold down record with this hand. And I'm going to enter in the notes, the chords that I want to play, which are the chords from the beginning of Video Games by Lana Del Rey. And now it's recorded those to the first 4 steps. From here, I'll change the step length to 8 and the step count to 4. Now I've got my chord progression. I can start playing around with it. First thing I know is that these notes aren't going to be long enough, so I'm actually just going to go ahead and extend every note to take up 2 steps. From here, I might think, oh, you know, what if I do want that first part to repeat like in the original song? Well, I know the step components to do that. But it's not holding that last one as long as it does in the song. So what I might think is, how about instead of holding that last chord, I hold that second to last chord? What would that sound like? So that's a little bit different. I'm actually going to move that last chord over 12 ticks, 12 pluses. And now it has an even different rhythm. So I'm going to add a multiply 3 to that first step, and now it's kind of got an even different rhythm than before. From here, I would probably say, you know, let's figure this out. Let's go to the snare track. Is the snare going to hit on 3 or on 2 and 4? Here it is on 3. Or do I want it to hit on 2 and 4? Very different feels, but I'm going to stick with 3. Then I'm going to change to the kick track, and right now I'm just going to enter in just kind of a very basic old school hip hop thing. I'm going to add some step components to say, like, you know, what happens when. And I'm just using whatever the default sounds are here. Oops. So I'm going to do that on all but the first of 4. So it kind of has, I mean, I'm not saying this is musical genius, but I could now go to the bass track and I could say, okay, do I want to reharmonize this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the step length. And then I'm going to play in, I think, what I just played. And I'm going to quantize that. And so at this point, I'm just kind of thinking of like, ooh, how could I make this interesting? What could I change? What could I switch up? And, you know, I could do things like, ooh, what if one of those kicks came later? So now that hit before the snare is just a bit late. So this is kind of how I think when I'm thinking of composing things. I tend to think like, okay, and then what if this were faster? And then I might think like, well, that hi-hat, like, I'm not going to do all my sound design here, but that's distracting how long that hi-hat is for me. So I'm actually going to just increase the pitch, filter it out a bit, shorten it. And then just to make things interesting, maybe I'll set it to a delay a bit. And so I'm not making like final decisions, but I'm kind of sketching out what I have in my head. So now I'm hearing, okay, there are these chords and they're higher pitched, so let's actually filter it even higher pitched. I might even raise them an octave. And now I've made room for a lead, if I wanted. I don't want to. But my point is kind of, that is how I think in terms of OPZ. I'm able to use both the functions of it as well as the step components to create whatever is in my mind. And I think that that's why you kind of need this mastery of that. And from here, I could keep this sort of on the go and later on change some mute groups, you know, figure out that basic arrangement for that first part, add in a second part, like a B part that I could go to a B pattern, and really just start to make it into a real song. And once I'm ready to actually record this, I'm likely to take out, you know, the actual synths I'm going to use for it and maybe spend more time thinking about the drum sounds. So I think that the engines and the samplers on this are meant just to give you a very basic idea of what you want. I like the drum sounds it comes with, and I like using the drum sampler, so I actually like just using the drums on the OPZ, but as far as synths go, I like using external stuff just because I find them pretty limiting, and I want to separate my composition and my sound design / sound selection process, because otherwise I'll just get mixed up and go nowhere. Okay, so that was kind of a very long example. Hopefully this actually helped. I've got a few more things I want to talk about. One is that this is why I like doing covers on this. It's so fast. I can just put down the chords that I see on a chord sheet, figure out the timing using step components and other stuff like that. And then if it's not in the range of either what I'm singing or if I'm like playing an instrument with it, I can just use the master track and transpose it. There's some limitations there, but it's kind of, I think it's really neat. I think that it's very easy to actually create a cover song that you're going to use and actually create, you know, a composition that you're going to finish later by using this sort of workflow. So I want to talk about returning into this idea of how is the OPZ designed. And I think it's best thought of in comparison to the op-1, because op-1, 1 is the first positive integer of an infinite number, right? Like an infinite set. Z is the last part of the alphabet, the last part of a finite set. And I think that that tells you a lot about what they can do. The op-1 can take whatever sounds you want, layer it as many times as you want. It doesn't ask questions. But you can't really like plan things out super well. You can do a ton of cool sound design stuff, create neat loops, and do all sorts of things like that, and have all these happy accidents. But on the other hand, the OPZ, you can sketch out whatever ideas you have in your head without, you know, without there being these happy accidents. But they do happen, but for me, I do like having that ability to think of, ooh, what if I did this chord progression with this beat, and then just be able to make it and just have it take a couple seconds. And I think that's kind of like the fascinating part of it. I also think that the reason I think that the sound design isn't really emphasized is because there are only 2 parameters per synth, and you can do a lot with extra routing on here, but it's easiest just to change those 2 parameters. And sometimes they're very broad. Like with the electric piano, I think it is, one of the parameters is just which electric piano sound is it. So it really is like this placeholder. And you can do a little bit with it, but also notice that when you're moving the encoders, they turn green in the middle, sort of, right? They don't actually only do that at 50 or the midpoint. They will do it, I think, at 49 or 51. They may also do it at 48 and 52, I don't know. But my point is that it's clearly designed to give you a rough idea, but not super precise. And I think that that's why it's meant to be a sketchpad. So people talk about the op-1 being a sketchpad, and that's why I had bought an op-1, and I was pretty disappointed to learn that like I didn't feel like I could sketch anything out. I felt like I kind of had to perform and kind of nail each layer each time, or spend a long time fussing with the sequencers, and what I really wanted was an OPZ. And then I got pocket operators, and what I really wanted was an OPZ, because I thought the pocket operators would give me that sort of precision that the OPZ does. And so in my mind, this is kind of the best value product that they offer. I hate to do like marketing for a company I'm not associated with, but you can get these pretty cheap, and there are build quality issues, but they don't, I don't think, affect the strengths of the device. And so if they're going to bother you, don't get it. But if you just want a really cool sequencer that controls external gear and that it makes it really easy just to sketch out an idea, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with this, in my opinion, if you're willing to put in the time to learn it. And that's the other thing. So I'm making these videos so that you have a way to learn it, and you don't have to do all the trial and error that I did. But also you should like be finding your own way, right? If you're interested in using your OPZ, just use it however you like. I just happen to really love it as a way of sketching out ideas. So hopefully this helps you. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for coming to my Zed Talk.